What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel, where today I want to talk about budget cases, specifically some things to watch out for when you're in the market for a budget case. Now, the case I'm going to be using today as an example is the Gamdias Talos E3 Mesh, and this video is not meant to be a slight against Gamdias in general, or any brand for that matter, but it's just a particularly egregious one that I saw and figured it would make a great example for this video. So without wasting any time and just jumping on into it, the first thing I really don't like about this case is the price. Now, $70, especially in 2025, is not a bad price for a case at all, but there's just better options for the money. When it comes to $70 cases, the two that come right off my head are both the Montech Air 100 and the Montech XR. Both cases where none of the things that I'm going to talk today are an issue. But now let's get to the physical, and we'll start with the panels. Now, while this is a tempered glass panel, it's going to be incredibly easy for someone to break the first time they want to take it off or put it back on, and I'll show you why. So right away, I do not like these kind of four-corner thumb screws with a glass panel. First of all, I think that's a horrible method and flat out cheap. So as you can see, as I take the last one off here, the panel does stay up. Why? Because there's suction cups under here holding it in place. But on the other side of that, it's going to make it more difficult for you to pry the front panel off, which is pretty dangerous when you're talking about tempered glass. And to make it worse, watch what happens when you try to put this thing back on. It will not stay. It will not stay because now the suction cups have expanded out and there's nothing for this case, there's nothing for it to rest on. So as soon as you take these peels off and you go to put it back on, now you gotta get your thumbprints all over it and press it up against the case just to put your panel back on. And that's just the front panel. Let's go to the back. So now, when we go to take the thumb screws out of the back, watch what happens. It falls right off. Why? Because, yet again, there is nothing here for this panel to rest on. You just gotta stick it back in there, hold it on, and then screw them back on. Awful. Now this next one technically is true from what they say and isn't any false advertisement or anything, but I just don't like the way that it's advertised, and it can be misleading to a lot of people. So if we look at the ad for this case, we see that it advertises right in the middle of the title that you can fit up to a 360 AAO. But when there's two pre-installed fans up in the front, most people are going to automatically just think that that means you can fit a 360 AAO on the top. But if our max GPU length starting from the bracket is 300 millimeters, how could we possibly fit something 60 millimeters larger than that going across the top? You can't. Where you can actually mount a 360 rad in this case is up front, with a couple caveats. Number one would be if you wanted to put a rad up front, you would have to move those two front fans. And in this case specifically, one of these fans you absolutely cannot get rid of, and we'll talk about that later. And then number two would be, if we look down there, we can see that there's no way the rad's gonna fit unless we take out the hard drive bay. Now, for most people building new systems, probably going off NVMEs, that's not going to be a problem. We'll just take the hard drive cage out. But for people looking at budget cases and using older parts or low-end systems that might actually still be using a 2.5 SSD or a hard drive, not going to want to take that out. So there's a problem. Now, I'm not going to badmouth Gamdias for this, because if you look through the pictures like you should, it does actually tell you that the only place you're going to fit that 360 rad is up front. So it's kind of a moot point, but I just don't like how it's portrayed right there in the title. It can be misleading for people. But let's move on. So now let's talk about the pre-included fans. And if we look up here, you can see there's only one wire coming off that back fan. So I guess there's an argument to be made that having one cable coming off a fan is better for cable management, but here's the problem. So right here are the connectors that our fans are using to daisy chain together. And these, although they look like PWM, are not PWM. And this is both carrying the fan power signal and the RGB. And as you can see here, that all comes down to one SATA connector, which means there's no way to control the speed of these fans. They will spin at 100% at all times. They will be loud. And if you're the type of person that cares about that, you're going to be annoyed immediately. Now, if you look up top here, this top fan has multiple wires coming off of them, and one of them is even a standard 3-pin 5-volt ARGB plug. But another wire coming off here is also using the reset button to wire all the LEDs together to this button on top of the case, where you can change the LED colors of the fans. Which sounds nice and cool and great, you don't need to use software, right? But in my experience, whenever it's running to a reset button like that, you can plug this 3-pin into the motherboard all you want. It's never going to work. the button is always gonna be the only way you're gonna be able to change those things. And to make it worse, in a case like this, we have no other way to link anything into this kind of fan circuit here. So when it comes to your other fans, or maybe an LED on your water block, you're gonna have to plug that straight into the motherboard, and now you're gonna have to use software and the button to control all your LEDs. Now, a lot of people wouldn't be annoyed by the fact that you would have to use a button and software to control all your LEDs, especially in 2025 when all these manufacturers wanna make their parts only compatible with their software only. So even in a $3,000 system like mine, I have to run multiple LED softwares just for my Li & Li fans and my Asus motherboard and G.Skill RAM. But just me personally, I'd rather do a button or software rather than both together. And when it comes to GPU LEDs, believe it or not, a lot of these graphics cards these days, just like my Zotac Solid, will actually save your color profile to the card itself. So once you download, for example, Zotac software Firestorm, set your LEDs on the GPU, you can literally uninstall that software and you'll never have to touch it again. Your GPU will save those LEDs. But like all things, be careful because that's not universal and doesn't apply to every single GPU out there. Now let's talk about what size motherboards you could fit in a case like this. And this is really a problem that's really only going to come up when it comes to a more narrow case like this. But one thing I would never recommend doing with a full-size ATX case is using a micro ATX motherboard. And that's just more for aesthetics because that board is going to end right here and then you're going to have all this wasted space and it just looks kind of odd. But my main gripe with a cheap narrow case like this is the fact that a full width motherboard would come all the way out to this standoff point right here, which means all these cable routing holes are now completely covered up, leaving you only this hole to bring all your cables through. And on a full-size ATX motherboard, your 24 pin is more likely to be closer to up here. So that's gonna look kind of odd. And I just don't like the way it's all situated. And now the reason that they still have cable routing holes right here is because really a case like this is meant for one of those older boards where it was a lot more narrow. Nowadays, any B650, B580, Z790, anything like that is more likely going to be full width. So if you're building a modern system, watch out for that. And just for reference, the max width of a standard ATX motherboard is 244 millimeters. So in other words, if somebody bought this case, I think they'd be extremely disappointed with the quality of the panels, the fact that the fans are gonna spin at 100% at all times and be very loud and annoying, and the fact that the only things you can ever actually make work with that LED button are these 3 included fans and nothing else. Now again, this isn't supposed to be a slight against GOMDIAS in general. Believe it or not, there are other GOMDIAS cases at this price point and lower where they don't do these things. Now there are other cases out there that I do like that use this button LED system like the Montech Air 100 that I mentioned earlier, but in the case of that, it actually comes with a hub in the back with 2 more open headers where you can plug more things into. And because it's using a standard 3-pin 5-volt, you can even use a splitter and plug even more things into it if you needed to. And once you do that, now you can control all the LEDs with this button, meaning you don't have to run any software at all. And it's the same price as this case right here. And that's basically the message that I'm trying to get across here, is that there's a lot of bullshit that goes around with these budget cases. So make sure you read everything very clearly and even go on Reddit and ask some questions if you need to. And you can always head to beeasybuilds.com and contact us, whether it's just a question about your own build or you're looking for a quote on a custom PC. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go get this piece of crap returned before I'm stuck with it. So game on, be easy, and we'll see you guys next time.